My name is Ashley Ramble, and I am Outdoor Grants Manager here at RCO. First off, I would like to congratulate you guys for your successful completion of your grant application and receiving a grant from RCO. Next to me, and who is also helping with the presentation, is Jesse Sims. He is a grant manager at RCO as well.
Hi, everyone.
There he is. He kind of popped in. We will be going over a lot of information today pertaining to the Planning for Recreation Access grant you guys received. We'll be going over a lot of information in a short time frame, but don't worry if you feel you have missed anything, because this is going to be recorded. And then toward the end of the presentation, the RCO Finance Department representative, Mark Gerasitis, will join us, and he will explain how to submit reimbursements through PRISM Online. So the purpose of today's webinar is to, hold on one second, there we go. The purpose of today's webinar is to get you off to a good start implementing your project. We want you to be just as effective at completing your project as you were at successfully receiving a grant. As we previously mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and can be accessed on the RCO website. We will cover information about the grant agreement, the implementation phase of your project, information on project design, as well as project requirements and deliverables. We also will touch on how to close your grant when your project is complete. If you have not yet set up a Secure Access Washington or SAW account and a PRISM Online account, we will walk you through that process. Then Mark will join us to cover how to submit materials for reimbursement of your project expenses. And finally, we will have a question and answer session. For those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, during the presentation, please hold your questions until the end. We also ask that you mute yourself until you are called on. To ask a question, please raise your hand. This can be done by clicking on the reaction icon at the bottom of your screen. This will then pop up the area outlined in red, and you will be able to click on the raised hand. We would like to introduce you to the Outdoor Grant Manager team. Each grant manager has specific areas of Washington state they oversee. We are spread throughout the state and are here to help you. It is important to work with us through the entire grant implementation process so that there are no surprises from either party down the line. Now, let's get the information started, beginning with the grant agreement. The most important document is the grant agreement. This is the legal contract between your organization and the state of Washington for grant funding. RCO administers the contract on behalf of the state. The grant agreement is a legally binding agreement that awards grant funding to accomplish a public purpose. The grant agreement sets forth the terms for the work you need to perform in order to receive the grant award for your organization. Agreements will include information like the project description, which explains the purpose and work you are to accomplish as part of the agreement. The time period of performance. This is the time frame in which you have to accomplish the scope of work in order to receive the grant award, as well as the project funding indicating the contribution by the state. Each grant agreement also includes a list of eligible reimbursement activities, which are the work objectives or deliverables that must be accomplished in order to receive funding. There are reporting requirements. Each agreement includes information about interim and final performance reporting that must be submitted to RCO. Finally, standard terms and conditions. These are the legal, financial, and administrative requirements of your grant. The agreement also incorporates other documents and materials by reference, like your application materials, PRISM information, maps, and your evaluation packet. Together, these documents help form the scope of work and make up the entirety of the grant agreement. It is incumbent upon you and your attorney to review the grant agreement before signing. Here are a few sections that I will highlight. There is a restriction on assigning or transferring this agreement to another party. The state is providing grant assistance for your organization to carry out the scope of this project. So if you have partners involved, remember that the organization that signs the agreement is responsible for seeing it through to fruition. Most projects will require some form of competitive bidding and procurement. Other sections require you to be in compliance with applicable laws such as SEPA or NEPA, Endangered Species Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, Buy American Act, and so on. RCO will not determine for you which laws apply. That is your responsibility, and it is important that you understand what is expected. There are several sections in the terms and conditions for the lawyers to review, but one you should be aware of is that RCO has the authority to terminate the agreement in certain circumstances. A few reasons include, number one, failing to make adequate or measurable progress at implementing your project. Number two, if a sponsor decides to not follow the requirements of the grant agreement, or after providing notice in these situations, RCO is not responsible for any cost after the agreement is terminated, and in some circumstances could require a repayment of any and all funds that you may have been reimbursed for already. Agreements will be issued this month. After the grant manager is done writing the contract, it will be sent to the sponsor. This is done through the electronic signature authorization form that was previously sent to you to fill out and upload to your project in PRISM. The agreement will first be sent to the individual listed as the approver. Once the agreement is approved, it will automatically be sent to the individual listed as the signer. After the agreement is signed, it will automatically be routed to RCO for signature. Then a signed copy will be sent to you, the sponsor. Your planning project deliverables may vary depending upon the type of project you are working on. You will have through October of 2024 to complete your planning project. Project results in one or more of the following deliverables. Number one, for a comprehensive park recreation and open space plan, it will need to meet the guidelines for grant program eligibility outlined in RCO's planning manual number 2. And you will also have to submit the planning eligibility self-certification form as well. If your project is a comprehensive plan and your intent is to use the plan to attain eligibility for other RCO grant programs, you will need to contact Nick Norton. He is the RCO's policy and planning specialist. We recommend you contact him at the beginning and throughout your planning process to ensure that you are starting on the right track. If your project involves a site-specific plan, you will need to submit design and construction-ready plans or bid documents. Other documents may be required, such as feasibility studies, cultural resources survey, SEPA-compliant environmental assessment, or permits. There is a lot more in your agreement. It is very important that you are familiar with the details in it, along with the RCO grant program manual that pertains to your project. Be sure to read it, have your attorney read it, and ask questions of RCO if necessary. Moving on to the project management and implementation section of the webinar. In this section, we will share with you information that will help you to be successful in managing and implementing your project. As always, your grant manager will be available to assist you throughout the life of your project. Your grant was evaluated and scored based upon the scope of work that was presented as part of your application. In order to maintain the integrity of the grant process, it is crucial that you complete the work as described in your grant agreement. Timely completion of your project is also very important. PRA grant contracts will be written for 18 months. The legislature has provided us direction that they want to see projects be completed quickly and efficiently. There are no time extension requests allowed in this grant program, so it is highly important to stay on point with the project milestones. Your grant contract has project milestones that you must adhere to. These milestones are standard milestones specifically created for the PRA grant program. Some milestones are indicated as critical milestones. The critical milestones have dates that cannot be changed, such as the start and end date of your contract, as well as submitting your final plans to RCO, project progress reports, and project billings. It is important that you stay on track and adhere to your milestones. If you need to adjust any milestones, you can discuss this with your grant manager. And as a reminder, you may not bill for cost incurred before the project's start date. In your milestones, you will see a number of dates that have been inserted for the submittal of a progress report. The purpose of the progress report is to help sponsors, RCO, and others monitor progress and keep track of potential issues associated with implementing your project. And to note, RCO may withhold payment of a reimbursement request if you have not submitted a current progress report. We cannot stress enough just how vitally important progress reports are. Upon completion of your project, a final report is required to document the actual scope of work that was accomplished. This should parallel what is in the grant agreement. You can start the final report at any time, but it must be submitted after your final billing. This is part of the overall grant project closeout process, which we will review later in the presentation. For site-specific plans, each project will need to follow Governor's Executive Order 21-02. Each project must be evaluated for potential impacts to cultural and historic resources or to buildings and structures 45 years and older. The review is coordinated by RCO, and the result may indicate that further investigation or mitigation will be required, such as a survey or monitoring. RCO has initiated cultural resource consultation for those projects in this grant round. Local tribal governments and the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation have been contacted to review the project area for potential impacts to cultural resources. Review your contracts and work with your grant manager to be sure that you understand any further cultural resources work that needs to occur. Now, our next section, Jesse Sims will cover, and it will be about project design.
Well, thank you, Ashley. We will cover the design considerations for those of you that are completing a plan for a specific work site now. RCO encourages sponsors to consider more environmentally friendly projects that support sustainable designs that, for example, might use less water by installing only native plants or drought-resistant vegetation, using recycled materials, use of sustainable products like decking, porous paving, and high-efficiency lighting. Sponsors are required to comply with the terms of the contract, which includes cultural resources, health codes, building codes, and accessibility. RCO will need to review plans somewhere about 40 to 60% complete, and then around 90 to 100%. RCO prefers to have plans and specs attached to your project in PRISM. ADA access is important to do correctly and to integrate it into the site so it serves those who need accessibility. When it's done correctly, it can serve everyone equally. Asking questions and planning ADA access into the site design will early make for a better project. When access requirements are well planned and done the right way, your project will be better. If you design your project to serve all users by going beyond the minimum ADA requirements, you will have a project that is transparent and usable by everyone, regardless of their age or ability. All new construction and most alterations need to be accessible, starting with the correct amount of accessible parking spaces. You need access routes to the elements and features, such as picnic tables and fire pits. Playgrounds have specific requirements. Do not forget about the surfacing under them needs to be accessible as well. Knowing the difference between trails and access routes is important. Requirements for access routes is more stringent than pedestrian trails, and they do not provide the same experience. Finally, you must make sure to provide as much access as possible for all users. Sometimes we do see mistakes at the end of a project which limits or doesn't provide the correct ADA access. This can be expensive to correct, and RCO could hold back retainage money until it is done. Make sure your surfacing is firm and stable and that you have access routes to all the elements and features of the project that need to be accessible. Be sure to ask RCO for help if you have any concerns as your project moves forward. There are several resources available to sponsors to use if applicable to your project. If you have any questions, please contact your grant manager. Now for the closing out of your project. Project closeout includes several steps, some by RCO and some by the sponsor. The closeout process is the way that RCO documents the completed project. It is important to start the closeout process early and work closely with your grant manager. There are a number of steps for closing out an RCO project. The first step begins with the final plans uploaded to the project in PRISM Online. The next step is submitting your final reimbursement request. Your final reimbursement needs to be submitted to RCO prior to you submitting the final report. You can start your final report anytime during your project, but you must wait to submit it until the final bill is received. As part of the final report, you will need to submit your final design plans or the final version of your comprehensive park and recreation open space plan. Many of you here today have already signed up for PRISM and Secure Access Washington, but for those who have not, you will need access to these programs to manage your project. Please pay careful attention to this segment of the presentation. Everything is done through PRISM Online Sponsor Workbench application system. PRISM is an online computer system open to the public to apply for grants, review and manage information on funded projects, and produce reports about projects. PRISM actually stands for Project Information System. You can access PRISM from our website. Go to the PRISM login, which is circled in red. This launches the system starting with the logon page. New users will need to create a new account. Once you have an account, you're logged on from the same screen. If you have any issues with logging in, please reach out to your outdoor grants manager for the geographical area that you're at. They'll be happy to help direct you to PRISM staff as needed. You will now need to set up your Secure Access Washington or SAW account first in order to access PRISM. So when you follow the link on our website, you may see this instead. Don't be alarmed. Once you have created a SAW account, you can link it back to the PRISM. Once you're logged in, select Add a New Service. You can then search for the Recreation and Conservation Office and add PRISM. It is easier to search for PRISM Online by the name, not by the agency it is associated with. From there, you'll be able to enter PRISM. This is the first page you see when you log on. It displays some overall information about your project. You can search for your project by project number, by sponsor, project name, and program. As you can see in this slide, we search by program, and the search results will bring up all PRA projects. Once you find your project, click on the arrow at the start of the row. This will open up additional information you're able to access. This is important because this is where you'll navigate to attach documents to the project and submitting progress reports. Along with RCO's website, outdoor grants managers are available to help and are one of your best resources. So it's important to utilize both resources equal. Now, I'd like to introduce to you Mark Darasitis, who runs RCO's financial department. He'll be giving an overview of the e-billing process. So if everybody just wants to hold on, I'm going to give Mark control. And Mark, I gave you control, so if you click on the screen, you should be able to. There you go.
Unmute. Oh, okay, good. Can you hear me now? Okay, it just took me a little bit of time. I'm not seeing the presentation that I prepared, Jesse. I see a screen with outdoor managers and RCO website.
Sorry about that, Mark. Just scroll one down, and that's the start of your new.
Okay, and I
Just
guess I
click on it. There you go.
wow. Okay, well, I'll be careful not to click too much. So hello, everybody. My name is Mark Gerasitis, and I am the RCO Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be talking to you today about RCO e-billing in PRISM. And let me get the deal for this thing here. Well, there's a little bit of a delay. I guess I expected there to be like a button or something. And I did click it, Jesse, so I don't know if...
Hey, MJ.
Yeah.
It's Lon here. Oh, you moved it already. Yeah, you can also use your arrow key to advance the slides.
Okay, good. Thank you, Lon. I
Mhm.
appreciate that. So this portion of the presentation, we're going to cover reimbursements in two sections. The first section is getting paid, and the second section is billing RCO. Okay, so first things first, let's make sure you're set up to be paid by RCO. To be paid, your organization must have a statewide vendor number that's sometimes referred to as an SWV. If this isn't in place before you submit a billing, we can't pay you, and I don't think we can even activate the contract until we have a statewide vendor number listed for each organization. Fine, but how do I do this, you might ask? Well, if you haven't done it yet, you need to go to the Office of Financial Management's statewide vendor payee and services website. There's a link right there, but you could also just do a web search and it would bring you right to it. Once it's set up, OFM would also update statewide vendors as needed. And when you're setting it up and maintaining it, you choose if you want direct deposit or a check payment. And I do want to point out that at the state, we sometimes refer to the checks as a warrant, but you decide how you want to be paid. Okay, so once you get a statewide vendor number, we ask that you report that number to your OGM, and then we'll make sure it's entered in PRISM so that you could be paid. If you already have a number, let us know what it is, and we'll verify that it's in PRISM correctly. And if there are any questions about the statewide vendor, the technicalities of it, it's probably best for you to work with OFM directly. Their staff are best able to answer your questions, so you can contact them here. But you also could do with the information provided here, but you also could do a web search and find that pretty quickly. Now, let's go on to the billing cycle. First up is the billing is submitted by the sponsor, which is the organization, and then RCO reviews the billing. The bill may be returned if changes are needed or if there's problems with it. But if it's approved and it's sent forward, RCO processes the billing. The state treasurer then releases the funds, and lo and behold, based on how your statewide vendor is set up, you would receive a direct deposit or a check, also referred to as a warrant. So now let's start section 2, e-billings. All of the billing information is entered into PRISM Online. One important point to remember is that RCO reimburses. So that means that you as an organization must spend the money first. Payment details are entered into the RCO billing. And for these payment details, they must include 5 elements: who it's paid to, the amount, check or description, check or document numbers, and the transaction date. So let's begin to create a billing. The first step is that you bring up your project in PRISM Online. This screen shows the PRISM home screen, and then you can navigate to your project by entering in the project number where you see the red circle. And if needed, you can expand the selection. I think Jesse had mentioned this earlier, by clicking the arrow to the left. And then you click on the billings button below. It has a dollar in front of it to kind of signify that it's where you get paid. And then the billing screen is going to show up. So this billing screen might look similar to the previous screen that we're on, but it's the screen that's focused on a specific project. And on the billing screen, there's a lot of important information. You could see to the left side, you could see the agreement total, your match requirement, any limiters on your project, and there's probably not going to be many for planning projects. What's been paid to date, if anything's been retained, if there's any billings before, well, I guess I got to be careful about not clicking. If there's any billings before, they show up at the bottom in the billing history. So now that you've reviewed the billing screen, you can now make sure that you have the correct rights to enter a billing. On the left and right hand side, there's an enter a billing button. If you don't have the correct rights, this will not show. However, if you do, it will show, and both buttons do the same thing. So click on the enter a billing button. And then the first thing that we'll do is go over the 6 steps for completing the billing. So basically on step 1, you have to set up the billing, and this requires some entry. Step 2, you enter all of the information for all of your costs on the cost pages. Step 3 is a billing summary, and that shows you information. There's no entry. Step 4 is payment information. That just shows you information. There's no entry required. Step 5 is where you could include billing attachments, but you only want to use billing attachments if required. So your OGM would tell you if it's required. If it's not, you could just leave it blank. And then on step 6 is the certify and submit. On this screen, you check for errors. And like it says, you certify and submit the billing. So let's get started on step 1. Once you select create a billing, oh, here, let me find my notes. You basically set up the billing information by entering the billing period. You enter the billing scope, and there's several other things that you have to set up on this page, and this sets up the billing in PRISM so it knows what categories you're going to be billing for and the billing scope and so forth. Once you're done with that, in the upper left-hand corner under the billing details, you see there's 6 screens: the setup, costs, billing summary, payment information, attachments, and certify and submit. Those are the 6 steps that we've already gone through. And so we'll go over now to step 2, the cost pages. Okay. And so now, this is where you enter all costs, 1 line for each transaction. You include the 5 items for each transaction: paid to, amount, description, check number, and transaction date. I'm circling below a completed transaction that was entered, and you can see that's how the information looks when you're done. Also of note on this screen is the payment calculation button. PRISM keeps a running total of what it expects to pay you to reimburse. So at any given point, it will show you what you should expect to be paid. If you click on that payment calculation button, it will show you more details, and we'll go into those details in a moment. So now let me show you step 3, the billing summary. And again, there's not anything to enter here. It just shows you the information. On the left side, it shows you the agreement total. In the middle, it shows you the total for this billing. And on the right side, it shows you the billing totals to date. Step 4 is the payment information. Again, nothing to enter here, but it provides details about the calculation of how PRISM arrived at how much you're going to get paid. So here's where you can tell if you have questions about it. But if you still have questions after looking at this, we'd be happy to work with you, and we have contact information that I'll share in a moment. And again, this information is available by clicking the payment button at any time. It's on each screen. Okay. So step 5, we're almost through with our billing there. This is where you would attach documents. But again, if you don't have anything, if you haven't been told to attach anything, you just leave this blank. And then finally, on step 6, the certify and submit. This is where you're gonna, first off, you check the billing for errors, okay? And so once you check the billing for errors, it's gonna show you the result of those errors. Now, in this example, you could see green check marks are good, red exclamation points need to be fixed, and the errors are listed in red text. Now, this is just meant as a demonstration. If you do have errors, if you ever have an error that you can't resolve, you could just give us a call, but most folks are able to work through. If you leave out key fields, if you use an incorrect character, it'll tell you specifically, and then you just have to keep working it until it gets fixed. But like I said, we'd be happy to work with you if you do have a problem. Okay, so once you submit the, once you check the errors and then you have all of the errors clear, you click on the certification. Once you read and agree with the certification, all the words that it says there. And then third, the submit button will then be enabled. And at that point, you can click submit. Okay, once you do click submit, the first of 2 final pop-up boxes come up, and it says basically, okay, we're going to submit this, or do you want to continue? So you would click OK. And then the second and final pop-up box shows up, and it lets you add a note. Now, I want to make sure it's clear. You need to click submit, because if you click close, it'll stop the process and your billing won't be certified or won't be submitted. So you click submit right there. And then now you should, so we'll do a quick review of the billing steps. The 6 steps, the first one is billing setup. That requires some entry. The second step, cost pages, also requires entry. The third step is information only billing summary. 4th step is information only payment information. The 5th step probably is not going to be used by you a lot, billing attachments. And the 6th step is certify and submit. If interested, there's a way to download an Excel sheet so that you could upload your billing. Let us know if you're interested about that when I give you the contact information at the end, and then we'd be able to show you how to do that. Okay, so one piece that I want to make sure of is once a billing is entered, I always recommend that people go back to the billing screen. Now, this was the second screen that you went to after the home page. And then you want to make sure at the bottom you verify on the right side the billing status. It needs to show in process. If you look and this shows draft, it means that you have not been able to submit the billing yet. And you would need to open up the billing, go to certify and submit, and complete the process. Okay, so here's a few items for me to wrap up section 2. There's related manual. Now, manual 8 reimbursements. This can be found at the following website, and I think you're probably familiar with that, but you might not be familiar with this other piece where you have billing and reimbursement information, and that includes also a link to manual 8. If you have questions about timesheet, how long you have to keep your records, how do you document this, that, and the other thing, what items should I use for description, it all is spelled out in manual 8. Okay, so here's a couple of things that you need to know about manual 8. There are some ineligible costs, so don't bill these for any reason. Ceremonial expenses, alcohol, bad debt expenses, fines and penalties. And the other thing I want to point out, there's tons of stuff in manual 8, but I do think this is important. You need to use a verifiable payment method. So you can't use cash or gift card payments as a payment method. You need to do some sort of check or electronic funds transfer because the cash and gift cards can't be traced. Here are a few other pieces in conclusion. Again, the website, rco.wa.gov. On email, there's an e-billings email, or it's not plural, it's e-billing at rco.wa.gov. That emails all of the fiscal team so that you could have various miscellaneous questions. But the final slide here is the fiscal contacts. Now, the sponsors are all split into 2 fiscal analysts, either Doran or Sabrina, based on the first letter of the sponsor's name. So if you are an A through M sponsor, you will be reviewed by Doran. N through Z will be reviewed by Sabrina. Gerald Seed is also listed here, and he's the lead fiscal analyst. So if you had questions, you can go to him, or you can go directly to your fiscal analyst. Okay, so that ends my portion of the presentation. I wanted to thank you. And Jesse, I'm not sure if we're open for questions now, or if we're going to do that later.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, we are actually transitioning into the question and answer period. Start my videos.
Okay, and you can grab control back. Let me know if I need to do.
Yeah, 1 second. Okay, I think I got it back now, Mark. So thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Yeah. So yeah, like Mark had said, once again, thanks for listening. It was a lot of information from all 3 of us, but it's all very important information that you know. At this point, I'd like to transition it into the question and answer. So questions for Ashley, myself, or Mark, we're more than happy to give it a shot. So please raise your hand and we'll call on whoever has a question.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay, so do we have a date when the grant agreements will be ready to sign? Yes, so I got really good news, everybody. And thank you, Lisa, for that question. Basically, we're going to probably start tomorrow doing the comprehensive plans, and here shortly after that, we will be starting the site-specific design plans to write the agreement. So things are going to get rolling really quickly now. So we have the agreement language and everything's ready to go. So thank you. Aaron, you have a question.
I was just curious if we have to wait to start accruing costs until the grant is completely signed, or if we can start accruing costs now, and then as long as they're eligible, be reimbursed after the signing the contract.
Yeah, and that's a good question, Aaron. So we actually have the start date as being April 1st. So, and I think Marguerite's on the line, or Mark would know this too. Since the agreement start date would have been April 1st, costs occurred in the month of April would be eligible for reimbursement, even though the agreement hasn't officially been signed.
Thank you.
But then we can't do any reimbursement until the contract is fully executed.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. That's a very good point. So yeah, the contract agreement needs to be signed by both parties before any reimbursement would actually occur. Ray, it looks like you have your hand up.
Good morning, all. Thanks for all the information. Question about bidding. We've been working with an architect on master planning for a while, and this the RCO funding was for design engineering of a campground. We are planning out the design engineering process for the summer. I'm curious about what are the bidding requirements? We're already working with an architect. Do we have to go back and solicit more bids on that, or what does that look like?
So from my perspective, RCO would tell sponsors to follow, city, state, federal rules with regarding, getting bidding with contractors or what have you. We're not putting additional requirements beyond that. Does that make sense, Rick?
It does, yes.
So like every community has like a public works department or what have you, and usually them or the financial office will know what are the particular rules you need to follow for your city or organization.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Paul. Yes, yay, yay on our part too. We're excited to get going. So Paul has said getting contracts ready and signatures to retroactive date for expenses. Yeah, so it's good news for everybody. So we either did a really good job or not very good job because we're not getting a lot of questions at this point. So please, this time right now is for you guys. We want you to walk away from this webinar feeling empowered, educated, and ready to hit the trails running. So feel free to use our time to the best so we can give you any information we have.
And I should throw in there really quick, Jesse, that if there are questions, feel free to email us at that contact slide. So Jesse, is this presentation going to be shared with folks so that they can see that?
Yeah, it's being recorded, and then we're also going to be putting it on the website, on RCO website, so people can review this at a later date. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're ready to bill, if there are questions, reach out to us. We'd be happy to walk through, or reach out to your OGM, and we'd be happy to walk through. There might be some pieces in PRISM online billing that are not exactly intuitive, but we can help you to get through it. So just let us know if you have problems.
And then tagging on to that, Mark, you guys have done well. I believe there's some videos that are embedded in our website around billings. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've got videos out there, and we're trying to update them now. And so, yeah, there's information out there. But
Okay.
if you don't feel like you have to kind of find it, if you have questions, please reach out to us and let us know. And we'd be, but also if you feel more comfortable with doing it like a research base, feel free to do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And Russ, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can.
Perfect. And then I'm going to blank on what the question was. Oh, the specific tasks. So like the benchmarks that we need and the milestones, we aren't going to know any of that stuff as far as what we need to upload until we actually get the contract from you guys, correct?
Yeah, that'll become a lot more apparent once the contracts, you can actually view it to sign, but there's, in one of the slides here, it showed the milestones for,
Right.
Yeah. And so you have the start date, the end date, and billing and progress reports. And depending on if it's a comprehensive plan versus a site specific, then there'll be, like on the site specific, there'll be 60% design and maybe cultural resource piece and some other pieces like that. So,
right.
But,
it'll just be easier to see that once we've got the contracts, and there isn't anything other than like when the contract gets uploaded to PRISM, there isn't another tab specific to look at those milestones. We just have to go back and look at the contract and those dates then, is that correct?
Well, once your agreement's signed, you can go back and look at your agreement, but also when you do a progress report, you get in there, it shows milestones in there, and you can actually say, am I hitting my milestones or am I delayed for some reason? And so, work with your outdoor grants manager with regards to that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, but another piece for us was just thinking that, yeah, I definitely, because you'll be able to, digitally have a copy on your desktop or in your filing system back at your organization. So I definitely keep that, review it, if you have any questions, as the project moves forward in the timeline.
Okay.
Any other questions, folks? Well, if there's no more questions, I guess we'll wrap it up. Mark, did you have something else?
Just had to itch.
Okay. Once again, congratulations, y'all, on being successful with this with the PRA grant. I'm really excited. Ashley is, basically all of us at RCOR. And then, yeah, you'll be able to see who your grant manager is. It's just based on geographical location where your community is. And we all be reaching out to you if we haven't already. And the new grant managers that Ashley and I had been doing it predominantly at the beginning, and then now there's probably about 5 other grant managers that will be working on this program. So anyways, feel free to reach out to any of us, and congratulations. So yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.